Morning call begins right now. There's growing concern over Zimbabwe's deteriorating humanitarian crisis. At least a dozen people have been killed and hundreds others arrested following recent protests and a government crackdown on the protesters. South Africa's Mmusi Maimane of the Democratic Alliance Party announced on Monday his party will formally approach the International Criminal Court as well as the United Nations Human Rights Council as part of its interventions to resolve the crisis. Opposition leader Nelson Chamisa has also announced his MDC party was ready for dialogue with the ruling ZANU-PF party to end the country's deteriorating economic, social and political situation.
Indeed, Lynette, on the government side, efforts are being made to restore calm. We saw the release of pastor and critic Eva Maruri on government's orders. After the riots, a few days later, he was arrested and charged with incitement to violence for broadcasting on social networks calling for a general strike. We bring you more details shortly on this.
Pastor Ivan Mawarire walked out of Chikurubi prison where he was detained since his arrest on January 16th on Wednesday evening, looking unfazed. The activist preacher had the Zimbabwean flag wrapped around his neck as he clutched his Bible. Zimbabwe's High Court had on Tuesday ordered his release on bail. Mawarire was charged with subversion after he tweeted his support for a 3-day stay-at-home strike that took place earlier in January. He faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted. Police say more than 1,000 people have been arrested since January 14th, when a strike called after President Emmerson Mnangagwa raised fuel prices led to street violence and looting. Some of those charged have been denied bail in a pattern lawyers say is a violation of their rights.
Well, Kumbirai Mafunda is the spokesperson for the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights group, and he joins us now from Harare, Zimbabwe. Thanks, Kumbirai, for accepting to speak to us today. So from a recent report, some activists have been illegally and wrongfully detained on charges of treason against the government. How would you describe the current situation in Zimbabwe?
Indeed, several people in Zimbabwe are standing trial or undergoing trial in the kind of courts that is across the country, in the capital city, Harare, in Lawayo, in Mutare, in Masvingo, almost across the country. People are undergoing or standing trial on charges related to deal with public violence. And as indicated, some of them have been charged with subverting a constitutional government, whereby prosecutors are claiming that these people tried to overthrow President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government. The people who have been charged with trying to overthrow the government include Pastor Ivan Mawarire, include Jafet Moyo, and Peter Ntasa of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, which is the country's largest labor federation. They also include people like opposition legislators who have been arrested and charged attempting to subvert a constitutional government.
And Kumbirai, would you attribute the current anarchy in Zimbabwe to President Emmerson Mnangagwa's announcement of a 150% hike in fuel prices?
Definitely, that is what triggered the protest, which was done by Zimbabweans from the 14th to the 16th of January. But not necessarily the hike in fuel price alone. I think it was much broader. It's the economic difficulties that the citizens are facing. The people of Zimbabwe are battling, are poor. The people of Zimbabwe are battling to afford to buy basic commodities. They don't earn enough salaries to sustain them within a month. So it's mainly to do with the worsening economic crisis in the country.
Opposition leader Nelson Chamisa has called for an urgent need to restore the constitutional rule and the rule of law. Do you think Zimbabwe's rule of law is under threat?
Definitely. We have been seeing an erosion of the rule of law in Zimbabwe. We have been seeing an unprecedented assault on people's freedom. We've seen Zimbabwe's rights being are violated. We have seen people being assaulted, people being beaten, there have been claims and the reports that people have been raped by security forces who have been conducting these raids on people. We've seen people having sources of livelihoods where they run some informal trading facilities being destroyed, and this is actually happening as we speak yesterday and today in cities like Harare and Chitengeza. So, like I say, we're seeing an erosion of the rule of law in Zimbabwe, which is a bit worrying, and we're also that the country the situation in the country is deteriorating.
Well, a worrying situation indeed, Kumbirai, but we have to leave it at that. And again, many thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Kumbirai Mafunda there, spokesperson for the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, speaking to us from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare.